Hello, you're watching the Great Canadian Bagel here, and today I have another Canadian federal election forecast. Now, this is also coinciding with the writ being dropped. It was dropped the day of recording, and Monday is going to be the first full day of electionness. So, I will be doing more regular updates for Canada during the election, and we'll see. It might be weekly. Now, before I begin, I just want to shout out to my channel members. I really appreciate the support you guys give the channel. And if you want to support the work I do here and make all of it possible, by all means, go down and link in the description below and press that join button. But otherwise, let us begin. Oh, and make sure you like, share, subscribe, and comment below. And also, one last note. I am doing the end of the month Q&A this Friday. So drop any questions below you might have for me. Tag them at Q&A if you want them answered then. I might do it it might be postponed technically because I have some people coming in for work in my house. I don't think it will be, but I'll keep you guys posted. And if it is, I'll just do it the week after. But with that, let us begin. So this is, to start with, I'll just do the model stuff right away. So this is the projection I model using all publicly available polls up till now. I will preface this. I'm always really clear when I preface things like this. I do not think this is accurate. And the reason why I don't think this is accurate, now this is not to say the pollsters are wrong, per se. The thing I want to stress here is that what the data the pollsters are getting is not predictive of what the election is going to look like. I don't think E-Day is going to look like this. Maybe if E-Day was today, it might look like this. But what we're seeing here is I think again, it's a little early. It's only 2 weeks since Carney got elected. But I think this is probably the peak of his honeymoon period. Or near the peak. It might be next week. We'll see. Well, now that the election's called, it might turn over faster. But anyways. So I don't think this is necessarily going to be predictive because a lot of people are seeing him favorably because he's a new leader. And this is not unique to the Liberals or Carney. This is going to happen with every new leader. And since there's the election now, I think that's going to turn over faster. And I don't think this is going to stay like this for very long. Now, what I expect is going to happen is the Conservatives are going to rebound a bit and the Liberals will fall a little bit. Now, I will preface part again. The Liberals might not actually fall in practice because the NDP also appear to be in free fall. So what could happen is the Conservatives might rebound and the NDP might keep falling. So the new voters the Liberals are getting from the NDP might match the voters they're losing to, the Conservatives, if the NDP keep free falling. And most polls seem to suggest the NDP is in free fall. Some polls have them at 8% right now. I think one had 7. So they're not in a good state. But I think we're going to see, at least in the near short term, a rebound for the Conservatives. And I especially think it's going to happen in Atlantic Canada because I think a lot of the Atlantic Canada polling has been wrong recently. And normally I'm really careful in saying the word wrong, but I think this is just straight up inaccurate polling. There's a couple reasons for that in Atlantic Canada. One, the biggest one, is it's really hard to poll Atlantic Canada because it's very rural. My home province of Nova Scotia is, in practice, like the urban part of the HRM, like Halifax, Sackville, Bedford, Dartmouth, Cole Harbour, like that communities, it's only about 350,000 people. The province is about 1 million people, so about 65% of the population lives in towns that are 20,000 or smaller. It's very rural. And then a lot of these, in particular Nova Scotia, but somewhat New Brunswick, a lot of the rural areas, especially the coastal rural areas, have a lot of fishermen in it. And we're just nearing the end of lobster season, especially South Shore of Nova Scotia, and the lobster fishermen on the South Shore of Nova Scotia are extremely partisan. Not partisan, that's a bad way to phrase this. They're extremely anti-liberal right now because the Liberals have just completely screwed up on the fisheries portfolio for years on end. As I'm recording this video, there are fishermen in Newfoundland protesting Carney's rally there. Like, this is how hated the Liberals are among fishermen. Not just lobster fishermen, all fishermen in Atlantic Canada right now. So, because of the season that this is happening, I do think there is a amount of... they're not getting accurately captured in the polls. So I think we're going to see a relatively good rebound in the next few weeks in Atlantic Canada. But I could be wrong. We'll see. But let us go into the main part of this, because this is the part we're going to care about. So this is the election. So obviously, as of time of recording this, nothing has happened per se that is worth really mentioning. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go through the three paths that the three main parties need to do. We're going to start with Carney, because we're going to just go by order in this list. I won't touch on the Bloc, because the Bloc path I feel like is pretty obvious to anyone who cares to know what the Bloc path is. They basically just become the surrogate for Quebecers, basically. The safe vote. Starting with Carney. So how does Carney win this? So for Carney to win this, he needs to thread the needle and be perceived as safe to the quote-unquote promiscuous progressive voter, but he also has to be seen as safe to essentially the boomer demographic, the older people, 55 plus. 55 obviously is not actually boomers, but you get the idea. The 55 plus demo, he has to feel safe to, as well as these like promiscuous progressives among the more younger voters. And that term is not because of like actual like sexual orientation or anything like that, or preferences. They're a very flaky, very easy swingable voter. They'll go to a different party in a heartbeat kind of thing. They're not loyal to a brand. Ergo the name. And this is not my term. This is a term quite readily used. So his path is to try to plot those things and try to present himself as the only one who can deal with Trump and to deal with the stability, like basically argue that the ship needs to continue sailing as is. And if the election ceases to be about Trump, ceases to be about trade wars, the Liberal campaign is in dire straits. They want the election to be about that because on every other issue, and every single poll is very clear on this, they don't have an issue lead on healthcare. They don't have an issue lead on climate, at least not in any meaningful fashion. And climate's very, very low sailing its issue right now. They're losing on the economy. They're losing on immigration. They're losing on cost of living. Quite significantly on those issues. So if the election is about the economy and immigration, they lose. End of story. There's no hope. If the election's about Trump, Carney has a path to win. And his path to win seat-wise is going to look like winning the Greater Toronto area, winning the Greater Vancouver area, winning parts of Calgary, winning parts of Edmonton, winning most of Winnipeg, coming in and winning London, Windsor, Niagara, Hamilton, Kitchener, winning rural Atlantic Canada, winning Montreal suburbs, winning some of these other swing bloc Liberal ridings in southern Quebec. That's what their win looks like. Maybe they come and pull some seats in Northern Ontario. They win the territories, like that kind of stuff. That's the Liberal majority. And given how weak the NDP is, anything short of a Liberal majority is going to be a very unstable government. The NDP is almost certainly not going to be able to provide confidence. So the confidence will rely on the Bloc Québécois. And Blanchet will 100% work with either Poilievre or Carney, whoever will give him the best concessions. And as soon as Blanchet is tired or doesn't get the concessions, he will force the election. Or if the Governor General decides, will force the other person to become Prime Minister for a little bit before forcing the election. Depends on the Governor General's decision in that regard. So Carney is really in practice, looking for majority or bust. And his majority is to basically snipe most of the NDP voters across the country and some of the softer liberal voters or conservative voters, and to hope that he can get them in a very efficient manner. I don't, despite polls showing it right now, I don't think there really is a path to the Liberals getting a plurality of the popular vote. Maybe if the NDP falls enough, it could happen. If they're down at, say, 8% here, maybe it's in the realm of possibility that the Liberals will get a plurality of the popular vote. But it seems very unlikely to me with the cards we have on the table right now. So that is the thing with the Liberals. For the Conservatives, it's basically the opposite advice. The Conservatives lose if the election is going to be about Trump. Everything Poilievre needs to do is to silence the issue. So he needs to do things like denounce Trump and say he's going to resist Trump and all that kind of stuff, right? But as soon as he finishes saying those things, he needs to then circle back to attack the Liberals on the record. He needs to attack the Liberals for policy issues. He has to present to voters why the Conservatives will fix those issues. Because it's not sufficient to say the Liberals screwed up immigration, or the housing market's screwed up because the Liberals are in power, or our economy hasn't grown in 10 years per capita because of the Liberals. You can say all those things, and they're true things. They're facts. You can look them up. But that's not sufficient to win an election. He has to convince people that he has solutions to those problems. And he has to do that while finding a way to navigate around Trump being the election issue. Because if Trump's the election issue, it's going to be very, very difficult for the Conservatives to pull out a win. Just because of the nature of what Canada is, and the fact that Trump is right-wing, it's very unlikely that voters, if the election is about Trump, will rally behind a right-wing Canadian leader. Regardless of whether Poilievre and Trump have any association, regardless if they like each other, regardless if Poilievre is very strongly anti-Trump, that's just not going to be a thing that's going to happen. What Poilievre can do, if his team is smart and he acts accordingly, is shut down the issue altogether. For example, historically, the Conservatives would get attacked over things like, say, climate change policy. Now, the solution to the attacks on climate policy is not to kowtow and say, oh, blah, 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 blah about climate change. It's to say, we're going to do X, Y, and Z, and then end it there, and then talk about something else. You answer the question, you give them an answer, and then you stop talking about it. And that's the same thing that the Conservatives need to do with Trump, and they lose if they fail to execute this. They need to say, tariffs are dumb, Trump's being a meanie, screw Trump. Okay, the economy sucks because the Liberals are bad. Like, basically, that's what they need to do. And if they can pull that out, they win a majority. The question in this hour, to me, is are they able to successfully do that? Because it's not just sufficient to say, oh, look, Poilievre did these things. Voters have to see that. The election conversation has to be about that. And that's the thing. That is that is Poilievre's path. The election cannot be about Trump. It has to be about the Liberals. If it's about the Liberals, they lose. Now, NDP, under Singh, this one's a much more complicated one, so I'm going to give a much more robust discussion. In the last couple years, the correct decision for the NDP would have been to fire Singh out of a cannon into Antarctica. The guy is poison. He is the worst leader they could possibly have. And there really is no redeeming qualities for Jagmeet Singh. Nothing about him is good. He's bad at fundraising. He's bad at connecting to the base. He's bad at prioritizing issues. He's bad at messaging. He's bad at campaigning. He's just genuinely a terrible politician. There's no upsides to Singh. But unfortunately, the NDP has this terrible, terrible habit of just clinging on to a leader as long as they have a pulse. This hurts them in Ontario. It hurts them in Nova Scotia. I would hurt them in New Brunswick if they actually had relevance. Same with PEI. In the West, they avoid this to a degree because they do change leaders on a more frequent basis. They don't cling on to one leader forever. Just look at the Saskatchewan NDP. Their last leader, the one who ran in 2020, retired, and they got another leader, Carla Beck, who did a lot better. So the NDP is going in with a huge headwind. With Singh. The lead weight around their ankles. I'll be honest, I don't think... But there's certainly no path to the NDP winning majority with Singh on their leadership. The trick for the NDP in the campaign here is to maintain not just official party status, but that is a concern because they're below it. It's to try to put themselves in a position that they hold balance of power. So what the NDP really want, if the Liberals are at 143 and the Conservatives at 155, they want to be in the realm of they want to gain 10, 20 seats. They can be even 25 seats again, taking a few from the Liberals, a few from the Conservatives, a few from the Bloc perhaps. They might have some play in Quebec, maybe. That would be the plan. And that would possibly put them in a position to hold balance of power, to get a supply and confidence agreement, or a more smart decision would be to have a case-by-case working relationship with the Liberals or the Conservatives. But they could do something. But right now, they're irrelevant. If they're getting 9 seats, Singh's losing his own seat, which I guess is a blessing for the party. But they're irrelevant. They're going to die. If the NDP is not able to maintain official party status, they lose the funding, they lose the parliament resources. They lose the committee time. They lose all these other benefits. The party's going to be in freefall. Especially if the Liberals pull a majority. The Liberals get a majority and the NDP's nearly dead. It's going to be really hard for them to come back. The last time this happened in 1993, it only came back because Jack Layton came in and he was a very good leader. He executed everything really well for the NDP when they were at their lowest point. Maybe there's a unicorn waiting in the ring, in the wings, to lead the NDP to a better position. But that's not a guarantee. That's not a certainty. You can't count on that. If you do, as the NDP, you're toast. So what does the NDP have to do here? Well, paradoxically, especially if they want to work with the Liberals, their solution is they really need to attack Mark Carney. That has to be basically their focus of the election. And they really have to hit on how he is an elitist banker. That angle. Now, flesh it out, of course, more. But the NDP really, really needs to articulate how workers cannot trust Carney to represent them. And then you can kind of pivot this into attacking Poilievre as well. The NDP really needs to try to reconnect back to their base. If they're smart when they go to release their platform, what they want to do is talk about, in their platform, their main issues. Strengthening unions, strengthening co-ops in rural areas, supporting, making back-to-work legislation more difficult, supporting workers in various sectors across the country. Yes, that includes cutting immigration. Yes, that includes looking at more productive and more useful fiscal benefits. Instead of using pharmacare to provide diabetes medication to old people and contraceptives, it should be aiming, the pharmacare program should be tailored, or at least pushed. The next drugs that are rolled out into it should be things that affect a lot of blue collar workers. Whatever, I don't know what ailment off the top of my head heavily affects blue collar workers, but there certainly are specific ailments that heavily affect blue collar workers. The NDP needs to come out with a very strong and robust drug policy, because in a lot of the cities of London, Niagara, Hamilton, a lot of the working class areas of BC, Alberta, have been gutted because of the opioid epidemic, and the NDP really should try to take charge on that issue. The NDP comes out with a strong program to try to combat the opioid epidemic, and that's not giving free drugs to addicts, actually recovering and rebuilding these communities. They need to do. They combine that with support for local co-ops and stuff like that. You could come up with tax policies to incentivize and make these businesses easier. Do things like strengthening unions and stuff like that. And then just don't talk about social issues other than immigration. And talk about immigration insofar as, say, temporary foreign workers are used essentially as scabs for the labor market. If the NDP runs a campaign like that, they will not win the election. They will certainly save the furniture, and they might gain seats if they do it properly, they do it quickly, and they do it fast. This has to be within the first week they drop this platform. Now, they almost certainly won't, because I didn't plan this, and Singh's a really bad leader. In reality, Singh's probably going to do a generic, very left-wing slop platform. They're going to talk about abstractly throwing lots of money at welfare and social liberal policies, and not at all focus on the places they have a competitive advantage in, which is supporting local communities and with policies that support co-ops, supporting unions, and supporting blue-collar workers is where the NDP has a competitive advantage. They do not have advantage with virtue signaling to urbanite left-wingers. They will never have that advantage, because that type of demographic gets what they want from the Liberals. Singh has spent 6 years chasing after that demographic, and you know what? Look what we got here. There's no NDP seats in the 416 or the 905. Even Davenport, the Liberals have a 15-point lead. Of course, the NDP will keep doing that. But that is their path forward. That is their only path forward. If they continue under the platform program that Singh has run in 2019 and 2021, the same platform platform ideas that the Ontario NDP ran in 2022 and 2025, the same platform ideas that the Nova Scotia NDP ran in 2021 and 2024, they are going to be doomed. They might, in the long term, fail upwards if the Liberals collapse, but assuming Carney doesn't resign, let's say Carney loses this election, assuming he doesn't resign and he stays on for 1-2 cycles, I don't really see a good path. Carney will cannibalize and destroy the NDP unless the NDP can successfully convince the worker, these blue collar, these working class areas, that you can't trust a technocratic banker from central banker. You have to convince you can't trust that guy. If those voters end up trusting Carney to deliver them left-wing fiscal policy, the NDP's dead. It will never recover federally. And Carney is trying to do that. Now, he's also trying to balance this by offering things like very micro tax credits or small tax cuts on the lowest income bracket. But he is trying to eat the NDP's lunch. And don't forget, Poilievre's also eating the NDP's lunch. Poilievre's winning a lot of blue-collar areas. He's winning these 2 ridings in Niagara. He's doing well in Hamilton and London and Windsor and Kitchener. Not in Northern Ontario, for crying out loud. He's doing this not because the Conservatives are being overtly pro-union. He's not doing this because the Conservatives are supporting things like local co-ops or other kind of vehicles that this kind of working class small towns want or benefit from. He's doing this because he's talking about immigration. Not enough, perhaps, but he's talking about more than anyone else, other than the PPC. And he's giving them a reprieve on social issues while trying to fix the cost of living things. Because the key here is the voters the NDP actually can win and wants to win are socially conservative. Now, they're not voters who are single issue abortion voters or whatever. They're not going to be necessarily turned off because the NDP is socially liberal. But if the NDP only offers them social liberalism, it has no path. There is no potential to win. There's no way to win. We saw this in 2024 in Nova Scotia. You look at places like Cole Harbour or Sackville. The NDP, in theory, should be very competitive there. Or you look at places like New Waterford. The NDP should be competitive there. Or Pictou. Or other such small towns across the province. And they're not. The NDP managed to luck out winning a seat in Sackville because of a combination of a bad local PC candidate and a good local NDP candidate. It wasn't the virtue of the party, it was the virtue of that one candidate. They won no seats in Cole Harbour. They didn't win New Waterford. Or was it Glace Bay? One of the two. Sorry, Cape Breton. Sorry. I can't remember off the top of my head. But, and the same thing happens in Ontario. The last Ontario election, 2025. The NDP managed to hold all their incumbents because of strategic voting, or many of their incumbents, but they lost ground everywhere else. A lot of these areas are places that the NDP would hope to gain, but they lost ground instead. And the federal party is making the same mistake. It's not running in the canoe model. It's not even running in the EB model, which is a little less effective in my opinion. It's running in this stupid other model that doesn't work. It's trying to sell things to people who do not want those products. It'd be the same equivalent of me going door-to-door knocking in a neighborhood where everyone already has heat pumps, trying to sell them oil furnaces. Like, why would you buy the oil furnace? You have a heat pump. The heat pump is cheaper and better. And that's what the NDP is doing. It's trying to sell people something that they can get cheaper and better elsewhere, or they already have it. And that's the key there. Now, for the Greens and the People's Party, their only effort is to win 1 or 2 seats. The Greens probably want 3. People's Party 1. If they can get that, they've achieved their objective in this election. I don't think they will, but, it is what it is. And that's really going to be the key going forward here, is this election is going to really depend heavily on what the campaign platforms are offered, more so than normal. Platforms always matter, but it's going to matter more so this time around, because this is an election, unlike what it was looking like last year. This is going to be an election where the result can change wildly depending on who gets the advantage. And the advantage is going to be based on who is dominating the conversation. And the conversation is going to be dominated by who is the most assertive, who is the most confident, and who is selling things to the people who are even possible to vote for them. I'll give you an example of this. You can say all you want that, say, the Conservatives should have a really robust climate platform. But if the Conservatives spend the entire campaign talking about their climate platform, that will scare off a lot of their voters in like the oil sector. So big loss in these two provinces. That's a lot of their donors, a lot of their backers. And what do they gain in return? The people who are on the left who really care about climate change, are they going to trust the Conservative Party? Probably not. People on the right who really care about climate change, they probably were already voting for the Conservative Party. And if they weren't, are they really enough of them to justify losing all of the people in like the oil patch? Because anything that the Conservatives do that's not their current platform would be to hurt the oil sector. That's just what it is. The platform is tailored to do everything they can to address climate change without actually affecting the oil patch. That's the fact. And there really isn't any other way to do it for their party. Similar story with the Liberals. You could say that, oh, the Liberals would benefit from trying to win working class men. But what can they offer working class men? Social issues? Nope. They hate guns. They talk primarily about women's issues and almost none about men's issues. They're not very good on drugs. So they can't offer them social wins. Liberals might talk about immigration, but they've already lost a lot of trust on that because they caused most of the recent problem. Okay, what about fiscal? Well, they might be able to do something on fiscal with a lot of working class men, because a lot of working class men tend to be a little fiscally liberal. But Poilievre is able to offer much closer to the social issues without really compromising the fiscal problems for them, at least as of right now, as of what he said. So it'd be very difficult to try to win that demographic. And in fact, as you look at the data for it, they don't win that demographic. The Liberals. So there is always these marginal costs of trying to win these different groups, but the play here is who, and this is always how elections work, who can win their base and then expand it a little bit. Will it be the Liberals? Will it be the Conservatives? The answer to that is who wins this next election. Now, before I sign off here, I just want to stress, this is what the model says. I'm not really sure if I buy it. We'll see. But I learned my lesson in New Brunswick last year that if I don't believe my model, I should still publish it because it could also be right. And my model was right in BC, or New Brunswick. I just didn't believe it. So I take my 2 cents on if my model's accurate or not. But I find this a little skeptical, but we'll see. With that, I bid you adieu. And I'll see you next week, probably with more Canada videos. I bid you adieu.